Yes, American who lived in Netherlands, Germany, Austria, and 25 years in Czech Republic. I will tell you my story. The year was 1996. I was 19 years old and about to embark on what I thought would be my greatest learning, my greatest challenge of my life, trying to become an Austrian ski instructor. I was in Kaprun, Austria for 7 intense days of instruction, twice a day skiing, once a day theory, and all in Austrian German. So if you don't know what Sommer alle da means, you can imagine how difficult it was. Sommer alle da is Austrian for sind wir alle da. So I spoke some German, I didn't speak Austrian. Amazingly, 150 students were involved, just 50 passed, and I became one of them. I was a ski instructor in Saalbach Hinterglemm for 2 full seasons, a couple short seasons after that. I made some of the closest friendships of my life, and those friends would later help me through the scariest period and darkest period in all my memories. Fast forward to the 6th of March, 2022, when I would truly embark on my greatest learning and my greatest challenge, and once again on skis. I was in Brixental, Austria, when I had a freak ski accident. I was going at high speed, where I went into an area on-piste, not off-piste, I want to make very clear on that. I expected to find rough, ungroomed snow. Unfortunately, I found no snow, just rock. I tumbled and smashed my body again and again and again on the rock and frozen earth. My kids were there and saw me. My wife arrived just in time to see me being loaded onto a helicopter. I had broken 17 bones, but probably had double that many cracks throughout my body. Even the Innsbruck trauma staff were shocked to see that many breaks in one CT scan. I'd broken my neck, my shoulder, my upper arm, my scapula, most of the ribs on my left side, and I shattered my legs into pieces. My femur was broken in half twice, fibula and tibia shattered legs as well. To be honest, that was not even the biggest problem. That came a couple days later when they were alarmed to discover a life-threatening infection raging through my body, and they didn't know why or from what. It was on the verge of killing me. So they figured out very quickly that I had perforated my intestine and it was leaking and on the verge of killing me. So they had to open me up and do an overnight surgery to save my life. The next day, or 2 days after that, they found a hole in my lungs and my lungs collapsed. Then I got pneumonia and I had to vacuum my lungs. The day after that, I got pneumonia again. And all of this while in a coma. When I woke up, I was paralyzed on my left side. I had nerve damage in my neck, my shoulder, my arms, and my legs, and I had burst a disc in my spine. My previously athletic, muscular body that had helped me excel through dozens of sports had been reduced to a measly 55 kilos. I had learned how to sit, how to stand, how to walk, how to eat again. To be honest, it was not easy at all, but strangely, throughout most of it, I was actually in an okay mood. What I understood later was that what I went through was not easy, it was horrible and tragic, I did indeed learn. And what I went through and how I experienced, I started to understand could be very applicable and valuable lessons for many people. And when I analyzed my journey, I perceived 3 distinct stages that I went through that really helped me come out on the other side with my smile still intact and metal-free, unlike the rest of my body. The first stage, surprise, surprise, I call falling, because at the end of the day, that's what I did, right? And we all fall, or will fall eventually. But in most places, falling is frowned upon. Failing is frowned upon. In some, like the US, it's a little bit more accepted, but nowhere do we teach people an acceptable way to fall. You know, a good way to nosedive into depression or slide into burnout. And learning to fall isn't important just for the physical catastrophes like I went through. It's just as important for many of the things that you all have been talking about over the last day and a half. The challenges we go through when moving to a new place or in a relationship. But what's our typical solution? From what I've heard talking to people for a number of years, don't fall. That's the best I've heard from most people, don't fall. which is really nice, but obviously we've forgotten the wise words of Mike Tyson when asked about his plan for his upcoming fight against Evander Holyfield, not Jake Paul. He said,
everybody gets strategy.
He said, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. Or fall, I would add. So don't fall doesn't really help us, and yet every time I go for a round of golf and I'm warming up beforehand, I very rarely go into the bunkers to practice hitting out of the sand, because honestly it's hard. So I usually spout off the classic joke to my playing buddies that my strategy for today for the bunkers, for the sand, will be to not go in them. Totally stupid, right? But it's exactly how we treat the concept of falling. We act like it doesn't exist. We act like it's not going to happen to us, we ignore it. Or worse, we sometimes try and heed the teachings of our parents to simply not fall. Or if we do, we're usually told as kids, and even later, climb your way back up as fast as you can, the same way you came. But have you ever seen somebody who's about to fall? Somebody who's in the midst of it, not like mine, but a normal fall? You can see that they're probably going to get hurt worse by what they're doing, and you almost want to say, stop, what are you doing? Anybody know who this is, by the way? I don't know if Daphne's still here, our Nederlandse vriend. Femke Bol, famous, well-known Dutch runner. Femke Bol was in the middle of the men's and women's mixed 4x400 meter relay, Budapest World Championships, I think 23. And with about 5 meters to go in the lead, she started to fall. You have two choices when you start to fall. One, you roll with it, get up, keep going, maybe get silver or bronze. Two, stick your leg out, kind of hope for the best. Femke chose to stick her leg out. She fell flat on her face, literally 2 meters before the finish line. Oh. No silver, no bronze, disqualified. Don't get me wrong, I think there's a time and a place for fighting, and for fighting really hard. I just chose to reserve my fight until after the fall. And I think it saved my life. So I took a very different approach. When I started my fall, I didn't fight it. I didn't try and stop myself. I didn't struggle or oppose the forces that were working on me. I actually relaxed and I let myself fall. And I remember it very well. I remember the whole fall. I was concerned for a long time if I should tell anyone what I had done, considering everything I put my family through. But the doctors told me my fall could have easily been catastrophic or fatal, and it wasn't. And I think a major reason for that is the fact that I gave in. I didn't give up, I gave in. You should define that and be very clear on that. When you give up, you stop trying to do something because you're not having success at it. When you give in, you stop trying to resist and fight so much. Sometimes when we're falling, in certain situations, I think we should consider giving it a little bit. That's what I mean by learning to fall. And the funny thing is, as a ski instructor here in Austria, I used to teach my kids how to fall. At the beginning of every weekly lesson, I would show them, here's how you fall and not smash into other people. And officially there is a way to fall called the PLF, parachute landing fall. Taught to people who jump out of the sky. I don't do that kind of stuff. But once again, its purpose is not to stop you from falling, it's to minimize injuries. Because too often I think we underestimate the wisdom of surrender, because we link it too closely with the damage of defeat. But retreat is not always a failure. And we should remember that. Major General Oliver Smith certainly did at the height of the Korean War, November 1950. His UN troops, numbering about 30,000, were vastly outnumbered by a larger Chinese force of about 120,000. Faced with absolute certain annihilation if they didn't give up, they instead chose to execute a fighting withdrawal. They punctured the Chinese forces on the Eastern Front and escaped to a port. And when he was asked a couple days later why he was retreating, he had this great line that I love. He said, "Gentlemen, we're not retreating. We're merely advancing in another direction." This is brilliant. I use this all the time now. This just proves the point that by yielding at the right times, we allow ourselves to not needlessly fight the unwinnable. And instead we can advance in a new direction. That's what I think helped me not struggle so much as I came out of my coma and entered the second stage, accepting. I'm still not sure why, but as I came out of my fentanyl oxycodone slumber, I found myself paralyzed with 10 centimeter screws drilled into both of my legs in 5 different places. I was somehow okay. I wasn't in a good mood, don't get me wrong here, but I never went down any dark holes for any major period of time. And I think a major reason for that is the fact that I accepted my discomfort. And unfortunately, I think there's a major epidemic in the world in the last 20 or 30 years, and it's a serious fear of discomfort. We seem so concerned with it. We seem terrified to touch it. Even slight discomfort like eating healthier food, changing your job, moving to a new place. Even the word discomfort, when I've talked about this with different groups, puts people off. It makes them uncomfortable. Sometimes I use the word friction instead. Friction. Friction is a beautiful thing. It's what allows you to walk without slipping. It's what gives violins the ability to make beautiful music. It's what allows a car to slow down when you want it to slow down. But that friction, that discomfort, is terrifying for many people. The biggest one being bored. It's a type of friction and discomfort. It leads people to risk their lives to avoid it. Texting and driving, right? So we're not bored at a stoplight, for example. Texting and walking is serious danger to your life, supposedly. Texting and skiing hopefully doesn't exist, otherwise they should have a 30-minute session with me. And the funny thing about discomfort is that you don't even have to wait for it to happen to you. There's lots of people who seek it out all the time. You know these people who wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and go for a 10-kilometer run? We've got the marathon runner here. Do you think he likes waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you said yesterday, right? Do you think he likes waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning and going for a run? I guarantee you, he does not. But the reason he does it is probably some version of that YouTube commercial, Rise and Shine. Go look it up. There's a great line where they say, you listen to the voice that says there's a reason you set the alarm in the first place last night. So, can we lean into the discomfort a bit? I think we should. I think only then will we understand and accept that these periods are friends, not enemies. Because this is where all the gems of gratitude lie. And how are most gems formed? Diamonds, the most precious of all gems, they're formed 120 kilometers below the surface of the earth at 900 degrees Celsius. And they take 1 million years to make. So if you embrace the suck, I promise you, you will have better luck. This is my tagline, by the way. I still haven't put the little copyright on it. Look, I was paralyzed and horizontal for a couple months. I got bed sores that were eating through my skin and bone that gave me pain that I cannot describe to you. I lost 30%. I used to say 30%. My wife told me 60% of my hair I lost. Even my fingernails stopped growing. It's called Bow's lines, I found out later. It's when your body's not sure if you're going to make it, so it stops everything that it doesn't deem important. And I guess fingernails are not that important, so my body wasn't sure. And yet the first time I was able to sit up and hold my own neck, because I couldn't do that for a long time, I was the happiest person in the whole hospital. The first time I was able to turn off my back and get off those bed sores a tiny bit, every visitor got a demonstration. The first time I went to the bathroom without a single hospital employee helping me, my wife got an ecstatic phone call. Luckily it was a phone call, not a video call. That would have been a little bit awkward. I was able to smile, and I had a lot of time because while my bed didn't change, all the other beds did. Every 2 to 3 days there was a new guy coming in. So I became the de facto elderly statesman supervisor patient. You know, I was coaching the new guys on when the best days for food were, who the worst nurses were, how to not watch black and white check old movies on Saturday and Sunday. I gave up the remote control my first week. I never made that mistake again. I was able to use my voice. You know, I asked people where they were from, how long they worked in the hospital, how many patients' butts they wiped per day, and if mine was the cutest, which I actually asked to a nurse one time. I won't tell you her answer. I was able to find gratitude for all those moments, even the shitty ones, no pun intended. And I learned something very deeply personal about accepting. So when I was 8 years old, my parents got divorced. I had a very good relationship with my mom and my dad. I was probably a bit closer to my dad. He was my rock. And unfortunately in 2004, when I was 27, he passed away all of a sudden in November, one afternoon. And over the next couple of years, my mom tried to fill in that gap to be my rock, but I just wouldn't accept her into that role. I don't know why. Probably some pent-up childhood trauma or something, not sure. But one day in Innsbruck, through cloudy, confused eyes, I woke from my coma, and the first face I saw was my mother's. So the one who gave me my first life was there as I started my second. And over the next couple of weeks, when I was confused as to where I was, what time it was, what was going on, she became my basis for reality. And she would spend 23 and a half hours in her hotel room before coming to my hospital and stroking her fingers through my hair and telling me that everything was going to be okay. And in those moments, all my biases were wiped away. And my mother became my rock. And I accepted her as such, and I have until today. The key for me was that without this stage, I could have ended up stuck and angry. If you don't allow yourself to find gratitude during the accepting stage, you may find something much worse. Because when we accept, we allow ourselves to naturally flow into the final stage, evolving. And that's really where you can grow and develop and transform. A lot of people would call this the return or the recovery, but that's not always true. Many times you're evolving into something completely new and different. Like for me, I wasn't falling down and going up the same mountain. I was climbing a new one. You're in a new relationship, not the same one that took you to that dark place. For some people, it might take a few days. For other people, it might take a few years. That really depends. The only thing that's for certain is that your speed or your progress won't always be the same speed. I found that out the hard way a couple times. The first is when they brought me into the Beroun Rehabilitation Hospital. They brought me in horizontal. But I had just started walking, or at least my version of walking, on my high walker. And my physiotherapist said to me on the very first day, Alish, I'm still very good friends with him to this day, he said, okay, let's see it. Let's see what you can do. And I got up on that high walker, I took 2 or 3 ugly steps, and I had that familiar sensation. My head started spinning, and I knew I was about to faint. I knew this from a previous life where if you got near me with needles or blood, I would faint. I don't have those issues anymore, by the way. And I said, Alish, I need to lay down right now. And he came over, laid me down quickly, and as I looked up, I see 8 or 9 physiotherapists all staring at me, and my doctor has come in the room to see how I'm doing on my first day, and there I am on the ground. I was mortified, embarrassed. Everywhere I went for the next month, there was always somebody dragging a wheelchair behind me just in case. My second hiccup came actually just 12 months ago or so, when in the middle of the night I had horrible pain. I assumed I was going to have something taken out. My wife rushed me to the hospital a few hours later, and they said, you have ileus. Your stomach has stopped working. We're going to need to do surgery again. It's from the ski accident. Before they did that, they stuck a tube into my nose, down my throat, and into my stomach. And they let me stay like that for 2 days. That was really fun. They didn't do the surgery though. See, I thought my evolution would be like the video games that I played as a kid, where you could pause your place and not get sent back to previous levels. My children inform me video games don't work like that anymore. That's why they can't come down for dinner when we ask them to. But that's not how evolution works. It's not in a straight line in any direction. And let's be honest, life is not in a straight line in any direction. We should enjoy those curves and those steps, and I definitely did. All those key steps I loved, and I remember most of them. The first day I came home after 5.5 months, it was tough. First day I went to the office, when I got out of my wheelchair, when I gave up my crutches. And I remember the first Christmas, when the very first present I opened on Christmas morning was this creation from my youngest son, representing his view of my evolution. And I can tell you there was not a single dry eye on our Christmas morning for a little while. Nevertheless, people will probably ask you, as they do with me, is everything okay now? You look the same. But I'm not. I've evolved, as have we all. I may not be paralyzed anymore, but I still have lots of limitations. You just don't see them. And that's okay. Because my gratitude leads me to live, and to live really, really fully. Granted, if I were 25 instead of 48, I might feel a little bit differently about things. If I wanted to be a world-class golfer or a distance runner, I could be a bit more frustrated than I am today. But I've always wanted to be world-class at loving life. And even with half the metal of a car and a motorcycle in my legs, I can still do a lot of things, just not travel through airports. Although, to be honest, that's a joke. I can, because it's titanium and it doesn't beep. The first time I went through in October of 22, I was traveling, believe it or not, and I walked through and nothing happened. And I was even standing there, my wife was with me, and I was like, and they said, sir, you need to keep moving, you need to keep moving. It's not like, I'm Tony Stark, like you must know that there's no way. Keep moving, sir. Anyhow, the whole process had been pretty good to me, falling, accepting, evolving. It's led me to do things that I normally wouldn't have done. At the 12-month anniversary, March of 2023, I decided to take my family to Paris to celebrate. If you had asked me before, do I want to go to the top of the Eiffel Tower? I would say absolutely, where's the elevator? Instead, a couple days before, I was buying the tickets. And right after I bought the elevator tickets, I kind of knew that I would never use them. And instead, on the day, my wife and I got into a small discussion, we would call it, because she wanted me to use the elevator and I wanted to use the stairs. Of course, I won. I used all 674 and made it to the top. Going down, obviously I listened to my wife and I took the elevator down because it's a lot easier going down than up, I think. And remember Femke Bol, the Dutch runner that I told you about in the beginning? So she entered a new race 2 days later, not the same one that she had before. She went through her accepting and evolving stages very quickly and she won her gold medal. A day after that, she won another gold medal. In me, I'm striving for gold all the time. I'm happy with silver, I'm happy with bronze. I'm happy with participation trophies where they're relevant. Participating in lots of sports. And to answer the question that might be on some of your minds, yes, even that one. Despite what many people would have wished, I always knew that I would ski again. And so my strategy was my fall was in the spring, my accident was in the spring of 2022. My goal was to ski by the end of 2023. I knew this was going to be one of those times for fighting and for fighting really hard. I knew there was a distinct possibility that I wouldn't be able to physically do it, that I wouldn't be able to get my body with my limitations to do it. But luckily I didn't have any major illusions. My goal was not to get back to this. I don't need this, because every time I think of that picture, instead I think of this picture. And I remember it was my first time outside in 3 or 4 months. And I knew that I would be so grateful for whatever performance my evolution would deliver. What I wasn't prepared for, though, was the feeling of joy, and elation, and hope that I would feel when on the 28th of December, 2023, I was able to do this. I learned how to fall, then I learned how to stand again, and I learned how to ski again. And like Churchill said, the definition of success is the ability to keep moving through failure without losing your sense of enthusiasm. And I certainly never did, and I can only thank my family, my friends, but mostly my wife for that. And we don't always get to choose all of our falls, but we can choose how we rise from them. So fall with grace, accept with courage, and evolve with purpose. Thank you.